So our next scenario, this is a comedy series first, so I decided let's put Dewey Cox versus Spinal Tap.
Hmm.
Have you guys seen both of these movies?
I've seen
I,
neither of these
I've
movies.
seen
Oh
part of
no!
I've seen part of the Dewey Cox story, and I've seen all of Spinal Tap. I love
All
Spinal
right.
Tap.
Well, first off, Dylan, you are missing out by not watching Walk Hard: The Dewey Cox Story, starring John C. Riley. Um, one of my favorite comedies, period, is Walk Hard: The Dewey Cox Story. If you're really into music, then that's for you because it pretty much makes fun of every musician from like the 60s into like going into the 90s, like every musician's path.
Mhm.
Um, and this is Spinal Tap is a fantastic mockumentary itself with a really pretentious hair metal band that starts out like in like concerts, but then like eventually they just keep failing and failing until they're reduced to being like the opening act for like a puppet show at an amusement park.
Well,
And
I will say because I absolutely loathe hair metal. Based on because I know nothing about either of these movies or their characters. I'm just giving it to Dewey Cox one because I hate hair metal.
Well,
Uh,
see, I would give it to Spinal Tap because they have an exploding drummer, and they would just throw the drummer at the Dewey Cox band, and he'll explode. That's an actual
um,
like running joke in Spinal Tap. It's my favorite
so
thing.
yeah, the drummer keeps dying is one of the
Hmm.
running jokes is that they keep having to replace the drummer.
Hmm.
um, so how they come together, I think, at least for my version of this is that Spinal Tap is they've basically fallen into opening for Dewey Cox. Now Dewey Cox did be basically it's a basically Dylan the Dewey Cox story is a full-on parody of Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash biopic. And he's a full-on like Johnny Cash parody, but they put in elements of like Bob Dylan and Beatles and Beach Boys and stuff like that, like all their careers. Very funny movie. It's on Netflix, Dylan.
I will add it
Uh,
to the ever growing list.
ah, it's worth it. Um, so, but I would basically Dewey Cox is he becomes like a legend, like on the level of Johnny Cash in the movie, but he definitely like takes a deep fall, like in the '80s and '90s or so. So I'd say that Spinal Tap ends up getting they fail until they become an opening act for Dewey Cox. And
That's a hell of an opener. Can you imagine? It's like I'm gonna go see Dewey Cox, and all of a sudden, just hair metal starts
yeah, you
playing. You're like,
get
"This is
Spinal
what I
Tap.
signed out."
Yeah, because Dewey Cox is like more of a the country rock and roll type. So Spinal Tap goes down there, but basically they interact with Dewey Cox, and Spinal Tap thinks that Dewey Cox should be opening for them, and he thinks that Spinal Tap shouldn't even be there because Spinal Tap is a bunch of idiots. That's where it goes up to 11 comes from.
Yeah, Spinal Tap's hilarious. If there is like when it comes to either movie, like I enjoy Spinal Tap more than I enjoy Dewey Cox. I thought it was funny, but Spinal Tap, every joke in that movie is funny. Every single joke made me laugh so
They're
hard.
so funny. The Stonehenge thing is
Yeah,
fantastic.
the
Where
Stonehenge. What
what is this?
Why is it this size? It's supposed to be huge.
Yeah, they wrote 7 inches as opposed to like set like 70 like 17 inches as opposed to like 17 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So the prop
It's
person is
funny.
just like, here it is. Is that it?
So funny.
It's so good. Um,
So yeah, my vote's Spinal Tap.
right. Um, I think well, Spinal Tap they have all those like pyrotechnics and stuff. Dewey Cox also has a band that is that could they both have bands that can fight each other, but
But here's the thing: is it a fight or is it a like Scott Pilgrim esque you know,
I love the bands.
yeah, Battle of the Bands thing?
If it was that, then Dewey Cox wins. And it's not even close because the whole joke of Spinal Tap is that no one likes their stuff.
Yeah.
Like no one likes Spinal Tap. This is an interesting thing, by the way, is that we usually don't talk about real people on the show.
Yep.
But Spinal Tap started in this movie, and then but people thought the movie was so great that Spinal Tap is an actual metal band now.
Yeah. I've heard
So
of
that
that.
they're actual musicians. But in terms of the fiction, Dewey Cox would win in a battle of the bands because the crowd likes Dewey Cox a whole lot more
Oh yeah.
than they like Spinal Tap. And because Dewey Cox has hits, Spinal Tap does not.
Yes.
If this was an actual fight, I would say that while Spinal Tap has a lot more probably like weapons at their disposal, we should not ignore that Dewey Cox has the strength to rip all of those sinks out of the public restroom.
Yeah.
There's a bit where there's this running joke in Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, where Dewey Cox gets like coked out, and he gets like into a fit of rage, and he just goes into the nearest restroom and just rips the sink out of the wall. And there's one point where he goes into like a public restroom and rips like 12 sinks out out of the wall. So an immense feat of strength, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
I didn't think that Dylan hadn't seen either of these movies. I thought we'd have more to go by.
I mean, I apologize, but I mean, I've heard of Spinal Tap. I was like, oh, that's an actual band. I didn't realize that they were both mockumentary-esque stories, and I'm like, oh shit. I feel a
Mm-hmm.
bit unprepared for this. But I will say, based off the fact of who Dewey Cox is, like, in terms of battle bands, it will be Dewey Cox because Spinal Tap, like you said, is not good. But I wouldn't put past Dewey Cox just because he's on coke, man. They're nigh invincible when they're like that. He might survive the exploding drum. He might catch him and throw it back.
That's true. I did not consider that.
There are so many great lines from the Dewey Cox story. What you doing in there? This is cocaine, Dewey. You don't want any part of this drug. It's fantastic. Um, well, okay.
I think we'll give a point to each of them in terms of like Spinal Tap just because of pent up metalhead rage.
Yeah.
For physical combat, but then like that would only happen because Dewey Cox beat them in a battle of the bands.
Ah.
So that's the last straw. But like, here's the thing: I think Spinal Tap still kind of takes the L at the end of the day because they get arrested afterwards for killing Dewey Cox and his band.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. So let's say the full scenario is it starts as them getting pissed off that they think Spinal Tap thinks that Dewey Cox should open for them. Dewey Cox think that Spinal Tap doesn't even belong there in the first place, which they don't. The two end up going at it in a battle of the bands. Who can win over the crowd more? Who gets the most applause? Dewey Cox clearly wins that one, and then it excels into a fist fight where it's a bunch of angsty metalheads beating the shit out of this old dude.
It's like just like in the middle, it's like hold on.
He does some cocaine, and then like Popeye and spinach, he becomes. And then
Honestly, Riley coked up's pretty fun.
yep, and then we just then it goes into that, and if Spinal Tap wins, they end up losing because they get arrested. If Dewey Cox wins, then he wins because no one wants Spinal Tap to be there.
Yeah, so we'll call it Dewey Cox wins, but he doesn't survive. And if he does, he might have taken too much cocaine to even be able to sing again.
This is factual.
Mm-hmm.
What a fun little battle that was.
It's a very very harsh juxtaposition from the edgy battle we did just now.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, we just had a very long conversation of Boba Fett versus Deathstroke, and I was very into that one. That was fun.
That was fun. That was very fun.